Voice coming. So 2 years ago, I started to talk about what I thought was going to happen with the profession over a 10-year period. So when I talk about the next decade, and I have been on LinkedIn, we're already 2 years into that. And one of the things I noticed, I was sitting there very quietly working around research stats, facts. Those of you who came to the event last week know that I'm a bit of a nerd for that. But I did notice, I was like, oh my God, most of our profession is going to retire out over the next decade. And it has started to happen. And so I wrote this blog on LinkedIn called The Great EA Retirement, where I put it into context, and that actually we were losing, mostly women, but these people had given decades to the profession, had all this wealth of knowledge about the roles, their businesses and organizations, and they were leaving. I mean, when Jill told me she was finally retiring, I was actually gobsmacked. I think I've just blocked it because I've known all three of you since, well, good, I think about 20 years nearly. But I just blocked out really that it was actually going to happen. So it was quite emotional when you all started sending me messages saying I'm retiring, because you've been a big part of my career as well. And when I started all the networking events 20 years ago. But I wanted to actually invite you on today to start to talk about, because I don't know, we've never really talked about it in the PA world, like retirement, what that looks like. People have just said a quiet goodbye and then that's it. And actually it is something that's really interesting, and we are losing so many of you now. And I wanted to sort of capture some of the gems, the lessons you learned during your careers, and how you actually planned for retirement. I mean, I'm a millennial, veteran millennial, born in 1983. I think most of us millennials have just blocked retirement out of our heads. But it could happen to our generation, but it's how do you even get into the mechanics of it? So thank you so much to Annalie, Teresa and Jill. I'm just invite each of you to give a quick overview of your career. So Annalie, I think we'll start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. So I am vintage 61, so I'm a bit older than you, but not much. And I started my career as an EA, so I trained for it in Germany. I took went to a language school, so I learned English, French, or more English, French, and Spanish. It was a 3-year course, and I then part of the, in order to call me European Secretary, I had to work for 2 years or 3 years, and then I would have the full certification for it. So that was back in Germany, and I had a few roles in coffee, in chemicals, and then later in cigarettes, and that's where the company got taken over by Imperial Tobacco, and my boss at the time asked me to come to London with him, or to the UK with him. And at the time it was right in my where I was in my life, where my friends were. They all had children, I didn't. I just had split up with a partner, so it was perfect timing. Then sadly, after we came over, 6 months later, they asked him to leave the company. And I, at that stage, thought I really want to do something else. I want to have my own responsibilities. I don't want to really be beholden to anybody and work along their schedules. Very kindly, they gave me 3 options: to move to Bristol because I was near London. They had 3 roles lined up for me: to ship me back to Germany if I wanted at no cost, or to offer me another role in the company. And I said, anything but PA. So I did that for 9 roles or 9 years. I was a senior brand manager, a trademark manager, and then worked in research. And that came to an end when the office near Slough then moved to Bristol. And that's when I then reconsidered, where are my strengths? What do I really want to do? Where am I in life? And I decided I am an assistant, whether it's PA, EA, team assistant, whatever the name is. That's what I'm at my core, and that's what I really love to do. So that's when I went back into the profession. Yeah, and then finished 2 months ago in another company in financial services. So yeah, I loved it.
Oh, thank you, thank you. We'll start unpicking all your careers after we've got round all 3 of you. Jill, or should we call you the original Miss Moneypenny? As I've joked over the
I've got a
years.
friend who's always called me that. Nothing further from the truth.
I know.
Did have occasional handsome men wafting through the office, or even had to work with him, I must admit. You've met a few of them, Vic. Anyway, my name's Jill Quirk, for those who haven't met me already. I was born in 1960. Yeah, 1960. Nearly used to want to say 63, but that would be an Ellie's thing. And I was brought up on the Isle and straight through into secretarial college for a year, and then got an office junior job for 18 months working for some.
2 seconds. Somebody's. Can I ask you to put yourself on mute so I can hear some background noise from somebody? So if you're not on mute already, brilliant. Okay, I think we've sorted it. Sorry, Jill.
Like, continue to whitter on.
Yes, please.
So yeah, did a secretarial course, worked for 3 millionaires for 18 months, which I realised wasn't really my thing. And then I joined the civil service on the Isle of Man as what they called a specialist typist, shorthand typist, really. But I was doing PA work really for the team that I worked for. And then there's a bit of feedback now, isn't there? Wonder if it's my phone. I'll switch it off. Then I got a bit fed up with the Isle of Man and its limited opportunities, and looked at going to work for the civil service in London. I guess it suited my values to be a civil servant. And the next thing I knew, I was working for the Ministry of Defence, and I worked for them for 39 years. Went in as a PA. The latter half of my career, I was an EA. I had a real variety of jobs, worked in the nuclear area, the defence and diplomacy area, medical, you name it, finance, you name it, I'd nearly worked there apart from HR, I think. And I had 4 overseas postings as a PA, which were great and very interesting. And I retired 2.5 years ago now.
What? It's been 2.5 years already?
Yes.
Whoa.
2.5 years. Yeah, I know. I think COVID and lots of other things. I always thought I'd work till 63, and then some other things happened in life. My father passed away, COVID happened, and I did go a year earlier, but I was getting tired and a bit fed up with it. And it's a case of get out while the going's good, maybe.
Yeah. I want to come back to that actually. So if we come to Teresa, and then I want to get into like what was that tipping point for you finally saying I'm off. Teresa.
Hi everybody, and thanks so much for inviting me, Victoria. This is a real honour, and it's given me something to get up early for.
I love it.
I'm 75, so I trounced you all, and I have just retired 3 months ago. Never even thought about it, actually. That because I was the oldest person in the CIPD, and that was the badge I got, and just thought I was going to carry on and on and on, and I would be carried out in a box. But in the end of March, when I just came back from my annual ski holiday, my boss took me aside and said, I've got some bad news for you. And I thought I was going to be made redundant because we were going through a huge transition, which is still happening actually, at the CIPD. And I thought, oh, please don't make me redundant. I really love my job. Anyway, he said, no, it's not redundancy. I'm retired. I'm moving on. So I said, oh, my goodness, well, you probably have made my mind up to leave then, because I just couldn't face introducing boss number 12. I didn't know who it would be. I probably wouldn't like them. They probably wouldn't like me. And it was just too much at 75 to actually go through the induction process, which takes ages with a director coming in. And I thought about it and put it to the back of my mind for a week, then resurrected it again and spoke to him again because he was going quickly. He decided he'd found another job. So with the transition, he didn't want to be made redundant, so he resigned. And I then spoke to HR. I'd worked for HR for nearly 3 years, actually, a couple of years ago, and thought, I know the process and I know the way they are, but they absolutely refused to accept it. They said, we don't want you to go. You're not on the list. You never will be. I mean, never say never, of course, but you don't know, do you? And I took that and I thought, oh, well, you know, I'll find something. There'll be something before the new boss comes in, whoever it is. And I put the thought aside that, oh, I won't like them or they won't like me. I was being positive. Anyway, something else happened, and a couple of my friends were made redundant, not necessarily other PAs, because there were only 4 of us anyway. And I thought, you know what? I just don't want to be part of this transition. I know I'm going to be dumped with a lot of extra work. I know that because I was going to be the only senior PA there. So I spoke to HR again and they tried to dissuade me, but this time I wasn't having any of it. So at the end of June, I retired, and amidst a flurry of parties and going fabulous lunches and doing all those wonderful things that I always expected would happen when I eventually did decide. And wonderful gifts and lots of tears from me because I'm a big, big crybaby, but I've done it. And
Congratulations.
the whole of my career, I have always been an assistant. I'm happy being an assistant rather, and I enjoy it and I give my all, and I have never ever truly regretted any of my jobs. I've only had 7 anyway. There was only one where it was obvious that we weren't going to get on with the guy, and I just said to him, this is not working. You don't like me, and actually Mr. whatever his name was, I don't really like you. So I'm resigning. I tried it for about 9 months, but I knew it wasn't going to work. And I was in London. I'm from Lincolnshire, and I moved to London when I was 19, much to my mother's terrible upset and the whole family. You know, what's she doing that for at the drop of a hat? But that's me. I do things at the drop of a hat. So for 35 years, I was at the CIPD, and I honestly, truly woke up every morning thinking, oh, I wonder what today will bring. I had so many different roles, things to do, and I was known as the linchpin, and that's me.
Well, thank you. Do you know what, Therese? I was really struck by how CIPD made a big deal out of you on social media. I thought that was lovely.
Yes,
you know,
that's
at a
lovely.
time, yeah, when we're sort of Pride, starved in this profession, it's kind of, yeah, it was really nice that they did that, and that's actually where I picked it up from. X.
Yeah.
I'd seen the CIPD had put some lovely pictures up, and I was like, she cannot be gone. No.
Well, I am actually going back. I'm doing 2 of their major events. You know, the CIPD annual conferences. I'm going to Manchester and also London each year. So that's an idea to me of how much they value me. So I mean, there are lots of other people who could easily do that hosting. You know, it's sitting and meeting and greeting people, but they want me. So I'm really thrilled.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily, I want to come back to what I say tipped you over the edge. What was the deciding factor for calling time on work?
In the end, there was a deciding factor, but I was made redundant from the previous company because they reduced their number of EAs from, I think we were 5 or 6 at the time, then to 2. And one was for the CEO, which was my friend's, and the other one would have been a split between receptionist and team assistant. And they recognized that it probably wasn't the right job for me, nor would I be prepared to do it. So I was made redundant there. And I quite enjoyed not working. Let's put it this way. And so at some stage, I asked my financial advisor, could I retire? What would I have enough funds? And he at the time said, you could if you really want to cut back, but I would suggest you work another 2-3 years. So I said, damn it, so I have to find another job, which I then did. And just as a little reminder to everybody, the universe does not know the word no. So I told myself I do not want a job in central London, and I really don't want to work in financial services. I found a job in Holborn and I was in financial services, although it was a trading company, but still. So be very clear what you want and put it positively for everybody there. And I absolutely loved the job. I loved the company, had a really fantastic CEO, still in contact with him, really liked him, absolutely fabulous man. But last year was extreme to me, and I've never had it in my career like that. I was the only PA and office manager in the company anyway, so it was always going to be a very busy role, which it was, and I enjoyed it. But then I had to I did an office refurbishment. Then we resurrected the cocktail party, which is an annual event and the annual event for our industry and for the company. And it's an event of about 1,200 people at the Dorchester. So I never done it before, so I had to do that. And then all the other board meetings, Christmas parties, everything else around it. And at the end and I still enjoyed it, but I came to a point where I already told my boss, I said, I'm making mistakes the way I've never done it before. And I need support. I can't do it all. And he gave me some support, which was more moral and more, so we are a team, and if there's anything, but there wasn't really much they could do. And in the end, I burned out. And as I said, I made so many mistakes I hadn't made in my 40 years of career within half a year, basically. And that for me was the tipping point, because I had mental health issues in the past. And I wasn't on the trajectory to that, but I did not want that to happen again. So I then had another call with my financial advisor, said, how does it look now? And he said, yeah, if you want to, you can absolutely make it happen. And so that then gave me the knowledge and the security that whatever decision I now make, I will be okay. So I still mulled it over a bit, spoke to some friends, and also it helped probably that I have quite a few friends who recently retired or are planning to retire. So we had these conversations as well. And then I put my resignation in, and had before, again, I think it's not for everybody, but the relationship I had with my boss, I mentioned to him at some stage before the actual deadline, because I wanted to get my bonus. Mentioned him that I'm considering retirement, and his immediate reaction was, we are not talking about it, and the best day to tell him is the 16th of April. But why is it about? So then we had the conversation, but it was the burnout, and it was the security that I will be safe and do have enough funds for an early retirement.
Do you know what, Annie? That's such a brave story to share with us. Thank you, because obviously, we're going through this cultural change in society where we're talking more about burnout and what that does. And you just saying there that, I mean, that was super powerful. Like, I was trying to prevent how far it could go with my mental health, and self-awareness is such a big thing when it comes to your. I mean, I've had a massive burnout this year and paid out the price for it, for catching a disease, but so I'm learning harsh lessons about that now, and I'll be able to preempt some of that better in the future, I think. Jill, I want to come back to, you were starting to tell us a story before I cut you short on your tipping point. So your dad had passed away. The Ministry of Defence was still as busy as ever during the lockdowns. I remember we had frequent catch-ups. And then did you just sort of hit a lid one? Because you were still having to go into the office on occasion, weren't you?
I was, yeah. Because the area I worked in, we needed access to, confidential secret information. So, it was okay to work from home. And initially we did it for as much of most of the time, but they reached a tipping point where, we had to be going in. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't really mind. I mean, I lived in a small flat in London, so, working from home was a bit, and not getting it. So actually going to the office in some ways was kind of like, yay! Strangely enough. And I was like, well, I'm not coming in till after 9:30 because of the, you know, it might be crowded and things like that. So I did kind of set some limits on things. And I think my colleagues were we were a small team, you know, but yeah, it was, I mean, COVID, living in a flat, I realised I had always thought I couldn't live in a top floor flat forever. Top floor as in 3 floors only, but I saw my neighbour below me who was in her 70s, had some health issues. She became a virtual prisoner in the flat, especially during COVID. And I thought, well, you know, suppose that something like that happened to me, and then Dad passing away and he left me a little bit of money, and I just thought, you know, I need to be thinking about a house. I'd always thought I'll retire, give London a couple of years, get involved in things, do some voluntary work, see how things go, then make my decision after I've been retired a couple of years. No, it changed completely to actually, I want a house. I want a house where my family can come and visit. It's going to be cheaper outside of London. Where could I live outside? And then my sister said something one night on the phone that kind of led me to be, you know, sort of start the old, what I call property porn for quite some time. Well, that looks nice. I'll go and see it, you know, things like that. So, and then there was a whole 18 months to 2-year process. And then finally, I'd found somewhere I wanted to live, and it was kind of what kind of house, and coming backwards and forwards, even spending a whole week here, you know, with family, and, you know, seeing if it really was somewhere and looking at other places. And then finally this house came up, and it was almost like it was meant to be. So I timed my retirement to when the house will be ready, basically, as well. And I thought, and there was an option of, you know, people were saying to me, oh, you could work remotely, just come down to London 1 or 2 days a week. But I knew the job. I knew it was like, okay, so I've got a cheap fare booked to come down on Wednesday or Thursday. All of a sudden that changes, and the boss isn't going to be there. He needs to be in the Middle East. Could I be around on Friday? And then all of a sudden it's a £250 rail fare, maybe, you know, and I just thought, no, that's not going to happen. I may as well like cut the umbilical cord now, you know, and move on to the next stage of my life.
I knew this was going to be a great conversation, because what I love about you ladies, you're so honest. Sarah's asked, where did you buy, Jill?
Oh, in Nantwich.
In Cheshire.
Yeah, in Cheshire. Yeah, I mean, I'd looked in Staffordshire. I looked at 2 or 3 other, and I just felt at home here when I came here. So that's it. You know, and it's great because I see my niece lives on the outskirts of, well, Stockport way. So I see her and her little ones quite a lot. The little ones have sleepovers here now. You know, I'm doing Pilates, I'm doing country walks, I'm making slow gin, I'm gardening. Yesterday, I planted, this is exciting for retirement goals. I put some cuttings in water a few weeks ago, and they rooted. Yay! I'm officially a gardener.
I love it. And who would have thought that Miss Quirk was going to end up doing that? But I've been amazing. So, like, just being brutally honest, like obviously Jill started to tell us about some of the positives of retirement. Like, Annalie, what are some of the positives and any negatives you've seen since you've retired? Or perhaps there isn't any, but that's for you to tell us.
Let's start with the negative, because I think that is something just somebody has to be very aware of, because I, for example, live on my own. So you have to make sure that you do have a safe social network around you, or if you move somewhere new, so that you make sure you grow it and you get it. And I was very lucky during the pandemic. I met a lovely lady who is a social organizer, and she said, oh, there's a Latin dance class here, there's a Zumba class there, there's this, there's that. So although I do have a very big social service, social circle, and quite a few of my friends are retired and are traveling a lot, but I still make use of that and make sure to put roots down where I am as well. So I think that can be a negative for people who are very busy and don't have necessarily that in place. For me, and I mean, we were alluding a bit earlier on today, is for me, the positive is to not have to put on my alarm clock, to sleep as long or as short as I want to have my tea in bed and even a coffee in bed. Teresa, I'm absolutely with you. Some days I don't leave my bed before 11 o'clock or even a bit later, because I read, because I do things, because I'm on the phone with the insurance company or so. You don't have to go into an office to do that. You can do it from your bed. So that is definitely positive for me. If I'm tired in the afternoon, I do take a nap. And the other big one is to be able to, not be able is the wrong word, but to happily say yes if social events and things come up, not having to worry about an early start at 6 o'clock the next day. So, and to know, you know what, I may be tired a bit, let's have a nap beforehand. Then I go out and I can really enjoy it. And very interestingly, I just come back from a week's holiday, and during that holiday, I realized that I actually am able and enjoy interaction with people more, because I'm not tired, my mind isn't frazzled or full of things going on at work. I can actually focus on the person in front of me and interact properly with this individual and hear their stories and take it in and have conversation. And before, I sometimes dreaded going to these social events because I just didn't feel I wanted to contribute. And again, I now feel ready or can do it again. So my life quality in this has absolutely improved. And the other thing is I travel a lot. So I've been retired 2 months, and most of the time I've been away with friends and enjoying life.
Yeah.
So that's really my positives and the one to be aware of.
Love that. Love it. Teresa, coming to you, what are the positives and negatives that you found since retiring?
Well, because it's only 3 months, I'm not really into the both sides quite yet. But the main negative, of course, for me is the lack of the salary coming in. And it was such a shock because every month when I was earning, because I was also taking 3 of my pensions, my salary used to go straight away into a separate savings pot for my splooshy dooshy holidays. So if anybody said, oh, we're going off to Fiji next week, I'd be there. So of course that was separate. That was completely separate, and that was my treat. But of course I don't get that now. And for the first 2 months, I kept forgetting. But I kept putting that money that I wasn't getting from my pensions into the savings pot. And then all of a sudden I thought, oh, I'm not getting this big salary, not big, but decent salary to put away anymore. So I've had to adjust to that, which is a big adjustment, not having that money coming in. And none of my other friends, none of my really close friends are retired. So I still have to make a date to see them, which is what I had to do before. I had to book a day's holiday or book an afternoon off or a couple of hours or something to see them. And I still have to do that because of their commitments. But one huge positive, as Anna Lee just said, I do have a nana nap most afternoons. And that is the best thing. You have your lunch, you have a cup of tea, and all of a sudden you're reading, and I think, oh, I feel a little bit weary. Close your eyes, and for like 30 minutes off to this nana nap in Nana World, and it's absolutely lovely. So that's a real positive. And a main positive, as everybody's going to say, is you can actually do exactly what you want to do without asking anybody. I mean, I've got husband, and he's still working to a degree whenever he pleases, and I would never ask him his permission anyway. That hasn't been our relationship throughout our 52 years of marriage. But if I want to do something and he wants to do it, we'll do it together. But mostly it's me just doing something for myself. I have actually started as a volunteer at the Royal Marsden Hospital, so that's interesting. And yesterday was an enormous shock because I was round at the children's ward, and I didn't want that. I told them I didn't want to work round there, and I don't. I don't want to see that. And also, I'm a befriender. So I meet, well, I've only met her once, this poor old lady, she's 92, and I met her for coffee and we got on really well. And then the next week she was in hospital, she'd fallen over. Not that that's hilarious, I don't mean to say that, but so I haven't seen her since, but she's there when she's ready and she knows where I am. So, you know, it's stuff like that, and travel as well. I haven't done any yet, but there are plans ahead.
Good. Well, you deserve them.
Thank you.
Jill, we know you're starting the next crop for Tesco's and co, but what, any negatives to the gardening and seeing your family?
Yeah, I think the negatives are, as Teresa just said, it's the money side of things, and especially when you're first retired, it's keeping. I mean, before I retired, I prepared for the money side of things, and that I went over and over and over again figures. I had spreadsheets of, you know, income, outgoings, you name it. But of course, you know, things have changed since quite a bit. And I do keep a spreadsheet of how much money is coming in and going out and all of that. Try and keep things on an even keel. You know, and maybe because, I mean, I'm on a civil service pension, so that's quite good, but I'm not yet on a state pension. So I'm planning another party in 18 months' time, and that comes in a bus pass party. But
let's hope they don't take that away.
there's not many buses around here anyway, so I'm going to get one on principle. And yeah, there's that, and also the fact that it's very easy to end up doing nothing. Very easy to get just swept into being glued to daytime television, unless you put yourself out there and reach out to meet people and make the effort. I haven't yet found anything that I want to do voluntary-wise. I think the thing I do want to do is maybe reach out to some primary schools and see if they want to find out if they've got anybody that want to come in to listen to children reading. So I think there's a risk of, if maybe you don't do something, that you don't feel useful anymore. Because I think as assistants, we've always been useful. We've always been, I mean, I was known as the office oracle, but mainly because I knew all the processes, and my military colleagues didn't necessarily know the building and the processes. But you do feel very useful a lot of the time as an assistant. Now all of a sudden, it feels like maybe you're not as useful to people. So it's, you know, keeping that impetus going, and also keeping the grey matter going. I mean, even if it's just doing Wordle, reading. I go to a lot of, I'm involved in a couple of things here where it's interesting talks by people. But we always had that in London to a certain extent as well. But so I think it's keeping the grey matter going, making sure you do that, making sure that you still feel that you've got a purpose in life and in the world.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Just fascinating. I just want to go back, looking back over your careers. Is there anything you wish you'd done differently? Any lessons learned, or anything you're like most super proud of that you'd like to share with us? I don't know who'd like to go first.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Annalie, let you put your hand up first. You go.
Oh, doesn't matter. So one thing and it was really interesting. So when I thought about what was I most proud of in my career, is actually an incident in Hamburg where I had changed jobs from a very supportive and really fantastic chef to a boss who described himself as a bully. And towards the end of my probation period, he called me in and said he wanted to extend my probation period. And I walked into that meeting and thought, I'm not even sure whether I do want to continue with this man. But just the fact that he made up his mind and wanted to extend my probation period, I thought to myself, I'm going to get you. I really am going to get you. So initially I said, that's fine. I'm very happy to walk away. So if you want to finish our our collaboration now. I'm very happy to walk away. I said, however, I think we can make it work, but it has to come from both of us. And to give some background, so apparently my predecessor, she had, for example, put in a day or two holiday to go away with her husband. And the day before she was about to go, he canceled the holiday for no reason apart from him wanting to have an extra him. So, and I think he was so shocked of me saying, A, that I was prepared to walk away, and B, that I said, we can make it work. I can imagine that we get to do that. That he agreed to give it a good try. And it ended up that he was helping me when I was moving house, and he was the one who brought me over to the UK. So I think if you don't let someone bully you, and don't let someone put their agenda on you. Make sure what is right for you. And all the time when he was sometimes behaving the way he was behaving, I was always asking myself, is it something to do with me? Is it me? Is it my person? Or is it something to do with him? And most of the time it did have nothing to do with me. It was just something happening in his life or in his mind or whatever it was. So I think, yeah, I think that's a big learning for it. Do what is right for you. Don't be afraid to take a stand and to walk away, because you do have the choice to walk away. There will always be another job, and even if it's Sainsbury's sitting at the till for some time, or stacking whatever it is. But also then trusting your gut. I think that's.
And actually, you know what, that advice and those lessons that you learn, they've come at a really good time for our profession, because frankly, in all the time I've been involved in the profession, I've never seen confidence and resilience levels quite so low. I mean, it's easy to look at LinkedIn, and we held a seminar in London last week, and I said, look, you know, LinkedIn's an echo chamber. It's easy to look at that and think everything's wonderful, but then you actually talk to PAs and EAs outside of that site, and talk to them at events and the emails and the coaching I do, and it's, yeah, we're definitely a little bit deflated at the moment. I think some of it's starting to tip around, and I'm not saying we're the only profession like it. It's been a rough few years for everyone. But yeah, nonetheless, in terms of toxic bosses, we give far too much to them, far more than they deserve. And I remember saying to a former boss of mine who was a psychopath, and I said, here's my bottom line: I would rather clean toilets in a pub than work for you. See you later. And yeah, you cross that line and that's it, you know, because it's about pride in your work for me, and I would get a lot more pride in doing something like that than working for someone like him.
But the interesting thing is, for this individual was, when he left, initially some people said, oh, finally, he's gone, so breath of relief. A year later, it wouldn't have been if XYZ, it wouldn't have happened if XYZ would be there. He wouldn't have let that happen. He would have stood in front of us or something. So I think, and again, I absolutely agree. There are people there who think, and I think especially unfortunately since the pandemic and since some political events, that some behavior has become absolute acceptable, and that is extremely toxic and not a very nice way to deal with people. But I think sometimes there's more to it. That's the way.
Yeah, definitely. Teresa.
Well, first of all, well done, Annalie, for being so brave all those years ago, because we weren't encouraged to be so honest and open, were we? So to have that bravery, and I use the word bravery quite highly towards you. So I don't think I'd have ever had it, even though I'm full of my own self-confidence now. My greatest achievement, actually, I just talk about the CIPD because I was there for so long. And luckily, there's no toxicity, not where around me. You hear people moaning and groaning about things, but it's nothing serious. So I've been very, very fortunate. But I think it came when we suddenly decided that we were going to have a travel not a travel bureau, but a travel department. And I, alongside one of my very, very, very close colleagues, we were invited to join that group, and we got it set up, we got it running, and Mandy and I did it together, and it worked absolutely perfectly. And then obviously it changed over the years, and other PAs became involved. But it was such an achievement to get that done, because we met a lot of people in the travel world, which is my other passion. Travel definitely is my passion. I should have been a travel agent, but it didn't work that way. And it worked really well. And Mandy and I were the two people, we were the go-to people. And that's really a very proud feeling, to think that she and I had both sent all of our directors and other senior managers all over the world for the last, I would say, possibly 15 years, maybe even longer, together, and making sure that they were confident to just say to us, I've got to go to Singapore next week, do it. I've got to go to Singapore, then Dubai, and then Australia, and like 4 or 5 different areas of the world. And we did it. And we did it with passion and efficiency as well. I can really honestly say I never made any mistakes with travel, because I knew how important it was. So that was the major thing for me. And I really do feel that whatever I've done, because I was an assistant, I wasn't the boss, I have done it to the best of my ability, and let them know that I'm more than happy to try. There have been occasions when I've had to say, I'm really sorry, I just can't do it. I just don't know what you're talking about. And that's been in recent years, actually, with the way that IT has come along. I've had to go to IT and say, I don't understand. I don't understand the terminology. And I think for me, to be brave enough to say I don't understand, that was an important thing for my personality. And that's where my attitude has come from, that just admit to your failings if you've got any. And also be prepared to say, look, I've done that. I'm very proud of it. And I hope you are proud of it too. That's the way I feel about bosses. I've been very lucky. I had 11 bosses there, and I loved them all. They were fantastic, but they all left me. So what does that say?
That you either helped them onto the next stage of their careers, or did any of them retire, Teresa?
No. Well, one, the very first one, actually, yes, he did retire, but he retired early, and it was a bit tenuous at the time. But of course, I didn't really understand it, because it was quite soon after I joined. It was a year after I joined, and I thought, what's going on here? And I was young. Not younger anyway. I was only 40, which sounds really young to me. No, he was the only one, but it wasn't really retirement, but he got it down as retirement to get some bit more money, I think.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And Jill?
Oh, right. Well, things I could have done better, or that there's lots of very small things there, really. Lots of small things nothing really big, I have to say. And I don't really believe, and I've learned as life went on, that looking back there are lessons you learn from what's in your past or whatever, but you can look back at too much maybe, and it's about what happens and how you move forward, and maybe how you learn the lessons from what you've done wrong and move forward. But what I'm most proud about in my career, I think, is probably the fact that in my last 11, 12 years or so of MOD, I was also an assistant head of profession. And that entailed training new PAs, because there are no courses out there now. So we would employ new civil servants, and they wouldn't have done a PA course. They didn't have to sit typing tests and shorthand tests like I did. And a lot of them would have no idea about how to conduct themselves in a PA type role. And it was they were coming in, maybe they were graduates even, trying to get the foot in the door of the civil service. So we ran a course for them and things like that, and we're there to have help with advice and support. So I found that professionally very fulfilling, You know, when you've had somebody turn around to you a year later, maybe email you and say, that made a huge difference to me. I mean, I just thought, job done. And the other thing is, of course, you know, I wished EPA had been around a lot earlier when I was PA. I could soaked up the hive mind and had more confidence possibly when I was a lot younger. But I did go on with Catherine Williamson to set up a network for PAs in SW1. Unfortunately, we dissolved it when Catherine's job moved on and I retired because there was nobody. We'd hoped it wouldn't be personality led, but I think COVID sort of killed it off to a certain extent as well. But during the years that we were running that, it was actually a really powerful tool for PAs in the SW1 area that connected them all in a very tangible way, and made a lot of things happen behind the scenes that people don't really know about, and brain picking and just connecting with people in other government departments and things like that. It was I was really proud of that, and I wished it had been able to continue, but that's life.
Yeah, I think some of the networking's definitely changed since the pandemic. I'll give you an example on Friday. I mean, obviously it is a Friday and people don't, you know, Friday, as the cabbie was telling me, Friday's now the deadest day in the week for the city. But people, after a PA event, when we were all out networking sort of 20 odd years ago and even 10 years ago, we'd always stay for a glass or two, wouldn't we, after a conference, or even, you know, even for those that didn't drink, they'd want a glass of Coke or something. Everybody is out the minute they just want to get home. And I totally understand it. It's like they want to get home to their kids, they've got caring responsibilities. We've got a crumbling rail network, which who knows where you're going to end up when you get on that train. Like there's just, I think we did so much networking in the evenings in London, didn't we, throughout our careers, and I think definitely some of that has died off a little bit now. And also speaking to some of the younger millennials and Gen Z, they sort of don't want to give up their evenings in that way, but they'll happily come to stuff through the day and what have you. So it's a shame somebody kind of millennial Gen Z didn't take over that network, but just repositioned it to fit with how they wanted to network going forward, because you did an outstanding job, and it was actually really difficult to change the mindsets of some of the EAs across the Whitehall. I think that is absolutely fair to say that. And you did work at that for a number of years, so all kudos to you. Is there any kind of, I mean, you may feel you've already covered it, any sort of hints and tips you want to pass on to people that are in situ now, or those that are going to come into the profession? I mean, as you know, I've been very honest with you all, the youngsters don't want to do these jobs. And even though the job will change, because that's what happens, they don't want to do them. And so, you know, we've got a big task on our hand on succession planning and talent acquisition. But for those people that are in kind of situ now, is there anything you want to pass on tip-wise to inspire the masses?
I think
it is tough at the moment. I think, I'm just going to be brutally honest, I think we're seeing some of the worst leadership Britain's seen in quite a while, and this is across spectrums. It's in politics, it's in the FTSE companies. I mean, when I look at, and I've been following the Post Office inquiry, that is some of the most rotten leadership and that's from, it wasn't just the Post Office, you know, there was other companies involved in that. And so I was interviewed for a podcast last week, and you think about, is that part of the problem as to why some of the younger peers, because they're probably sitting there thinking, I'm not working for people like that. Why should I? I don't want bosses like that do those things, because obviously some of the other generations, they get a lot of rap, being snowflakes, lazy. There's quite a lot of intergenerational tension on social media and from media outlets, but they're also, you know, into the ethics and values. But I still think that was there in our profession, even when you ladies first came in. I think it was there.
Oh, sorry. I think for me, and I had this conversation with somebody that I worked with over 25 years ago in Athens, who came to visit me, and she's in the civil service, although another government department, and we were talking about how we felt that there wasn't quite the integrity there that it used to be when we first joined. And I brought it up, and she said, "No, you're absolutely right." She said, and certainly, you know, my last 2 or 3 years, yeah, I would say that, yeah, there was in certain quarters a lack of the integrity that I would hold the civil service to, and that helped make my decision about leaving in some ways. One thing I did do, and I won't go into names or anything, but I did have a boss who did something that I patently disagreed with, and it was against some of the rules. And I raised this with this person 2 or 3 times, and a colleague, and was more or less told, well, I'd discharged my duty because I'd told him. And I said, well, no, I can still do other things. I could ramp it up to nuclear level. And, you know, we had a hotline that you could report people on, or I can go to a senior civil service servant with this. And that's what I'm going to do. So I went to this senior civil servant and I had proof. I had screenshots and I had paperwork to prove that this had happened as well. And the senior civil servant said, send this to me. So I did. I don't know what happened as a result, but I made sure that email was, I also copied it to myself at home so that my own backside was covered. So if there was something going on, if there is a PA out there and maybe there's some strange practices going on and you've got proof, email yourself, because you don't know 10, 15 years down the line, you know, the post office thing has taken
decades.
Decades.
Yeah.
You don't know further down the line that might not come back to bite, or there's an inquiry, or there's, so if there is anything, you may not be powerful enough to get something done about it, but just make sure you cover your own backside.
I love that. Thanks, Jill. Teresa.
I don't know about tips, but I don't know whether it might just be me where I've just come from, but a lot of roles seem to be classed as admin now. They don't offer jobs where the PA title, EA title is quite so prevalent as it used to be years ago. It's sad because people start off as admin and want to progress, and then they like their job and they like the place, but because there's no PA or EA role, they then have to start looking elsewhere. But which is really, really sad. We tried where we were, 2 or 3 of us, to say that we do a lot more than an administrator, say. We know a lot more. We have to put aside our own thoughts a lot of the time when we see things and do things that we don't really agree with, because it's not our choice to set those rules and regulations. So I think that's really sad. But as far as tips are concerned, I think people don't necessarily stay as long as I did. It's not necessarily a great thing. It was perfect for me because I was doing so many different roles and helping so many different areas. But for youngsters, I think they need the experience of probably moving on after about 3 or 4 years rather than staying huge time. But definitely don't just go from job to job after 6 months, 9 months, or a year, which I see a lot of actually. I think that you've got to get yourself settled into a role before you can move to the next level of that role.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And Annalie?
I've got a few things. So I think one thing for me is it doesn't really make a big difference whether I was a team assistant, a PA, an EA. I think my tip is for anybody who thinks, oh, the role is boring, or I'm just an executioner of tasks. I think put your thinking hat on and try to find ways within the company, whether it's within the department you are, or look further on, where else can you support heads of Where else can you make an impact? And usually it may start with a very small thing. I mean, I remember in one of the roads, I decided that the branded material, the marketing material we had was a bit boring. So I started looking at new things, and suddenly the head of marketing was quite elated that we do have a few things. So just look beyond your role. And for me, in a way, I disagree perhaps a little bit. Don't necessarily look at the title, what they put the roles out of, but look at what does the role offer. And I agree, there's a lot of admin going on, and a lot of team assistance for 120 people and stuff like that. So that possibly may not be then your role. But I also found it very interesting when we're looking for my replacement, how many of the ladies who did apply, when I asked them, why do you want to have this role, or what was the best boss or the worst boss, and just questions like that, they couldn't answer it. And the reason they wanted a role is basically to pay the bills. So if you go in with that approach, and they called themselves career EAs or PAs, I'm just thinking perhaps you're missing a trick there.
Yeah, I think so. I think we miss a trick, and I speak when I say we, I say the majority of the profession in the UK, that not enough the right questions are being asked at interviews, because if they were, you wouldn't be ending up in some of the roles that you're ending up in. I mean, there's a whole big debate around the job title thing again, which will continue rattling on for a few more years. But what I will say, I do think it was a mistake. And as much as I do love our American counterparts, absolutely lovely, wonderful people. But when we started Americanizing the British industry with the term administrative professional, unfortunately, whilst it works really, really well in America, and I've spoken at conferences out there, and they've got it all fine out there. But for here, admin was always the gateway to other professions. So you might, from admin, you might become an EA, you might go into HR and become a HR administrator. Like, it was just a gateway to so many professions. And then we sort of mopped it all up. And I think it's part of the reason, not all, but part of the reason why we've seen the salary depreciation assistant to 100 people analyst rightly pulled out. I mean, some of these job specs out there and adverts are just completely insane. Like, it is beyond insane as far as I'm concerned. Now, I just want to see, has anyone got any questions for the ladies? We had some lovely feedback in the chat, which I will send you all afterwards. Katerina is from rainy Portugal. She's 27 years old, so she's far from retirement. However, this conversation's been highly inspiring for this stage of her working life, and that she just wanted to thank you. Really interesting to listen to your perspectives. Well, I mean, of course, I'm guessing most of it. Did you start off in a typewriter? So you've already come through a technology change,
Oh
didn't you?
yeah.
From the typewriter to the computer. Yeah.
And it was before the Olivetti golf ball as well. Mine was. Mine was a
golf ball,
the
yes,
first
I loved it.
typewriter. Yeah.
And
When I went somewhere, and actually it was probably the CIPD. Actually, when I went there, I only had an electric typewriter, which was to me the best thing ever. But when I went there, I had an Olivetti golf ball, and I thought, oh, I've made it. And all of a sudden, it all exploded. So yes, a steam typewriter for me.
paper diaries. Do you remember paper diaries?
Yes, I love a
Yes.
paper diary though.
Yes.
I still use one.
Nobody was allowed to write in pen,
No,
because
no.
you always wrote in pencil, so it could be rubbed out, but sometimes it would
Yes.
change so much that you were then
Yes.
sticking pieces of paper.
Well, do you know what I've
Carbon
learned?
copies, the actual carbon copies, one in
Oh
pink
yes.
for the
Carbon
filing, and one in green for the daily one,
Yes.
and then the white one gone out, and there's a blue one for someone else, and you had to be careful not
No.
having any typos in there.
I think
And
so
Tipex.
you remember at the beginning of August there was that big global IT meltdown. I can't remember the name of the company if someone wants to remind me.
Yes.
The blue something, or I don't know, but it was
No.
but
It'll come to me in a
it
second.
wiped out. I mean,
Yeah.
systems all over. We
Yeah.
weren't even a subscriber.
Crowdcoms.
Ah,
Our concept was, so they supplied the IT security for all the big IT systems. And they run on over one night an update at the same time that Microsoft did. And these two updates didn't like each other.
No, and EPA's not on any of those systems, but our systems were down for nearly a week.
Yeah,
we
everything.
couldn't access SharePoint, Teams, and I
everything.
just said to my little volunteer team, I think we need to go back to a bit of pen and paper. Like I don't want to be caught out like this again. Because people were understandably really angry with me. They'd be like, "How is EPA ended up?" I don't know, and I still haven't worked it out. But we did get hit by it, and we couldn't access anything. It was really frustrating. I'm just going to the comments. Jessica said, having seen the tech changes, how important do you think it is to keep updated with it? And she's 30. I'm only 30 and I don't like it. Oh God, that's so refreshing for someone young to admit that.
It is, isn't it?
With young guys who didn't know what OneNote was and things like that. So, you know, but they could shoot guns.
Yeah, it's
But
very,
how
it
did you-
is very important though for the person who did ask that question. You've got to, because there'll be somebody behind you who'll be able to do it. And if you can't do it and you don't want to do it, or you're seen to be really objective about it, then someone in HR will see that and they'll move you around and put somebody who knows it. You really have got to learn it, really, really.
And if you
Not to
don't,
stay
AI will
relevant.
take over your role.
Yeah, you're left behind in every step of the way.
I'm just going back to some of the comments. Kate is saying it's so interesting to your stories. Thanks for sharing. She's in awe of your careers and bravery. And it was my utter pleasure. You think I was going to let these ladies sail off into the sunset without giving us some of their gem? Yeah. And Jane was saying keeping up with tech will open up many more opportunities for you. It does. I mean, I guess the thing is, it's not unique to PAs and EAs. Everybody has to do it, like literally everybody. But I think if you are an EA or PA, given what happened to EPA during that tech global meltdown, perhaps there is that backup plan back in place with some of the more old-fashioned methods. Because I'm happy to admit I was totally caught out, and we just finished all the hustings for the elections, and you know, and I was starting to get back into EPA stuff, and then that happened. I was just like, oh my God. Oh my goodness. Elizabeth said to help her be able to retire, hopefully early, she started to put a portion of her annual pay rise as an overpayment into her pension. I think some of you mentioned earlier some of the bits you were starting to do. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I think make sure that you got a circle of friends and social circle in place when you come to retire.
Definitely. And I guess like we've been a culture that's never really talked about money. Did you start like with some of that circle, Annalie? You said they were your friends and some of them were starting to did you have like open like trade information about money and what are you doing?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I asked, for example, one of my friends who is now, I think, a year and a half, 2 years, and I said about her spending. I mean, has there been any changes for her? She actually says she spends less now, but she travels more. So I think that's you have to make sure of that. And yeah, one of my friends, she was asking, what are you doing? And making sure that you do have an income, because suddenly, like Teresa was saying, suddenly there's a salary coming in. And it's before the actual pension is coming in. So for me, it was just something, how can I structure it? So in this case, for example, let's be open, I took a lump sum and I'm going put it in a savings account, and I'm going to send myself X amount of money every month. So that I do, and I know that's the money that I can safely spend. If I overspend, there are consequences at the other end. So, I mean, just you have to find a way to do that. Another friend of mine, she wants to take the lump sum and wants to take an annuity straight away. So I think you have to make sure to see what works for you. And I think it may be worthwhile also to think about how much are you spending currently, and how much of that is mortgage. I paid off my mortgage just 2 weeks ago, and that gives me the absolute peace of mind that if I decide to go to Fiji, Just kidding.
Yeah, I'll go with you. I'm
And
there with you.
I know that will be, I don't know, I'm prepared to spend 10 grand of it. I know it will mean I have to take to eat ramen noodles for 6 months or a year. That I can do that because I got
Yeah.
a head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well,
And
congratulations. Yes.
I
Sorry,
would-
Teresa.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say this.
Mm.
My absolute top piece of advice is please, please do not dispense with the idea of pensions. I now am earning more from my 4 pensions than I actually earned from my salary. My salary was particularly poor, I hasten to add, diabolically poor actually, but that's not the point. That's not the issue. The issue is that I urge everybody to take an additional pension if you possibly can, even if it's only a very small amount every month. Believe me, you will need that money. You really, really will need it more when you retire than you probably do now. And that's just my advice.
No, I love that actually, because again, for the younger generations, they're probably thinking about other things, and there's been quite a lot of negative chatter by the media on pensions of late. I think so. It probably hasn't made it that attractive to, you know, the Gen Z and younger millennials. Jill, anything to add on?
Well, I think when you're a younger generation, you just think, well, I might not make it to pension age. You know,
Yeah.
you spend all that money now, but most people are these days. Healthcare's better, and I think the younger generation are in the gym a lot more than we ever were. It was more in the gym than in the gym, but
Yes.
with me. But
Oh.
you know, but I think you do spend less in retirement on a lot of things. You don't need as many clothes. You don't need as much makeup. Maybe you're eating lunch at home. I mean, I go out a couple of times a week as well, but there'll be other things that you will spend your money on. So I think everybody finds their own path financially, and it's a lot depends on what kind of lifestyle you have. If you can be somebody who's out, you know, 5 nights a week, eating steak, going to the best restaurants, blah blah blah, then you're going to need a bigger pen. You're going to need to look at how much you'll need. If you're somebody who's like, oh well, I'll go out 2 or 3 times a week, maybe just locally, and you know, I'll have a couple of holidays a year or whatever, then you know, or have a holiday pot. But, you know, sort of what, as they say, like envelope stuffing almost, but do it separately.
Yeah.
Start thinking about how. I think in your 50s you need to start looking at how you want your retirement to be.
Yeah, I love that. And you've got some resources that I can share with people, and I'm also going to share the podcast link, the podcast interview I did with you not long, I think after it wasn't that long after you first retired. So I will share that as well. And I know you've also offered to, if anyone wants to chat to you about it in more detail.
Oh yeah, I'm quite happy to talk to anybody who's like heading towards that retirement sort of thing. I've got lots of friends who've done it since me. A couple of them have said that girls I used to work with, well, we've looked at what happened with you and thought it's less scary. So, and it's not scary giving up work. I have to admit, there is, you know, it is almost like stepping off the abyss in some ways, but then in other ways, it's like there's almost a case of every day being a holiday in a lot of ways. And I'd say that I've actually been to Fiji, ladies, and it's fabulous. So get yourself.
I'm putting it on the wish list. Elizabeth,
Yeah, it's on mine.
Elizabeth was just saying, back in the day, secretaries and PAs were the pioneers of change and expected to master new tech so that you could teach the execs and other colleagues and keep learning, stay relevant. Absolutely. And saying definitely top up your pension pot, you wouldn't survive on the state pension. And I have to be honest here, having spoken to some economists in the city, I'm quite engaged with politics and the economy stuff. I'm not even sure there's going to be a state pension around I'm talking decades away, but I think it could still happen. If there's any last questions from anyone, now is the time to ask. But I just want to say a massive thank you to all 3 of you for what you've done for my career. When I was that little mouthy, gobby 21-year-old setting up PA events in the city, saying and I remember one I remember one PA saying, "What the hell do you know? You're only 21." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. Like, I'm here to learn from all of you." But so many of you stuck by my career. You were there, came to the conferences. You know, you were a big part of my career success story. And it's going to make me emotional because I'm going to bloody miss you. I know I've still got you as friends.
You're still
but it's
here.
actual, I know. But you've been on that my career journey with me, and you've been at all the events, and you know,
Well,
rallied
we're all very
behind.
proud of you, Victoria. You have done so well from being, as quote you, a gobby 21-year-old. You never came across as gobby. You came across as somebody who knew what she wanted, where she was going to go, and how she was going to do it. And look where you are now.
I know, 42 in a matter of weeks, but I know, still a whippersnapper. Although that's
Yes.
my niece did say to me, "Well, your class is middle-aged now, aren't you?" And I was like, "Okay, thanks."
No.
They've got no filter, the youngsters, no filter, but that's why I
No.
love them. But
What I like about you, Vic, is that you've always been you committed and you deliver.
yeah,
Now,
And you've always
Yeah,
been you.
yeah.
You've never tried to be someone else or
Yeah.
pretend to be someone else.
no,
authentic.
and you know, I won't lie. Like, it's been a rough ride being a volunteer CEO. I just it is. I've learned so much in the last few years, and I've made so many mistakes as well. But I don't shy away from whatever I put out there to EAs and PAs. And you know, I did quite a challenging presentation last Friday, which I'm repeating virtually this Friday. For anyone that's interested on how we have to reposition the profession to survive. And that was a hard, you know, I was giving them some hard data to compute, and they took it really, really well. And that's refreshing for me, because sometimes at some of the presentations I've been at over the years, there's been so much resistance. That's one of the changes I've seen with PAs over the last 20 years. We've suddenly got into this sort of vortex of resisting the change, and actually we can't. We've just got to make it work for us, and you know, drive things forward. And that's, I see myself as part of this transition period and taking that through. And then of course then I will be handing down to the younger generations to continue that next stage of evolution. But again, thank you for everything you've done for the profession, for being such great role models, for inspiring us. This has been one of my favourite firesides this year. We're getting lots of thanks. Enjoy your retirement. Great conversation, discussion. Thank you, everybody. Very informative. Elizabeth hopes she's in the same position when she retires. Yeah. But we're getting lots of thanks. You see, I knew you were going to go down well, but thank you for doing this for me today, and the EA community. So hopefully I'll see some of you soon. We're back out now that these blooming train strikes are finally over. We are back out doing events as we were in London last month. We've got esteemed fashion designer and business leader keynoting one of our events next year, Karen Millen, OBE. So we're going to bring some of these leaders and get them in front of us a bit more. And yeah, so much to come out. I've got so much to come out and do with the team. Maxine, almost 52 and hoping to retire at 55. Thank you for all the good advice and pointers. More congratulations to you all. You see, all this adulation and love. It's lovely.
Yes. We love it, don't we, girls? We love it.
Yeah, I mean, there's elements of work I miss, you know, the people, some of the people mainly, but there's an awful lot of all of this being tied up with process all the time rather than being able to get on with doing it, that I just found like turgid. And I didn't see the point in it.
Well, one little project I was thinking about, tell me in the comments, or you ladies, tell me if I'm a bit crackers. Now, we have got some history of the role of the secretary and the PA, but I kind of feel we lost some of it because after 2008, it all got a bit crazy with the global financial recession. But when I've got time, and perhaps I need a little volunteer group, I'd love to put some sort of, not a book to sell, but some sort of, and we might have to do this online, somewhere to capture some of what's happened in our profession and some of the role models we've had, and getting interviews from those people, and so that people can still reflect back on that. Because sometimes when I did my secretarial diploma at 16, you know, I still reflect back on some of the stuff I learned in that even now. I've laughed that shorthand's making a big comeback. That is just so funny to me and not surprising. but I just think there's always stuff that was there in the different decades of these roles that you still always utilise. But I don't think we should lose this evolution we've continued, because obviously you went from typewriters to the computer. We're going, now into a lot of the role will be AI related, and we still don't know what that fully looks like. But I just want to capture all this sort of history that we've got. So that's on my project, my personal project wish list. Perhaps we could have it in a museum one day,
Yeah.
I've got a museum, please.
Sorry,
Right.
I think it's at the door. I pop out quickly and be back in a
Yeah,
second.
that's fine. We do need to capture it. Yeah, Kate, perhaps we need to get a sort of working group together, and then everyone just sort of collates information, and we find out, secretarial practice.
Oh,
Love
wonderful.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yes.
It is a good idea, isn't it, Elizabeth? I just kind of think, let's do it, because I don't want to lose. I think society is just moving so fast at the moment. I just don't want to lose the big achievements we've made, and how we've evolved through these different decades, and the new generations that have continued to come in. Don't want to lose that. But yeah, we've got some volunteers already. Oh, great! I'll be taking you up on that. So
Oh, yeah.
I want to wish you all a great rest of week. Literally praying for everyone in the USA that's going to be going through this horrific hurricane. Brilliant. I'm going to get a team together. Let's convene on Zoom. But yeah, praying for the safety of everyone involved in the incoming hurricane. But I hope to see some of you soon at our events on LinkedIn, wherever you want to touch base. But again, thank you to the ladies. You're absolutely wonderful, and I feel so lucky to have you in my life. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Lots of thank yous coming through.
God. This book's 1986, by